everybody, I'm Charlie Tolhurst and welcome to Charlie Tolhurst Show to today, the 24th of September, live on YouTube tonight. And of course, it is coming into autumn now. Oh, it's going to get cooler very soon. Trust me, we're all wrapped up tonight in my layers, surely and soundly this evening, bringing you all the latest news. I'm joined by Labour Party supporter Zach Chambers for all the latest news. Hello, Zach.
Hello, Charlie. Hello, mate.
Autumn's certainly kicking in. Here in our accommodation, in our houses, should I say? But it doesn't mean that the governments are getting cozy in their own parliament this week, because I'm going to be talking about what happened this week with the budget. Yes, it was a mini budget yesterday that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, should I say, Kwasi Kwarteng, done, delivering lots of new values, and Conservative Britain certainly looked interesting the other day. Best budget since 1986 is what a lot of the Conservative commentators were saying. Well, there was a few things missing from it, I can say that for sure. Hospitality VAT cuts and that surely well needed at some point. But lots of news from the budget. National insurance hike scrapped, corporation tax hike scrapped. Big changes coming for families as well. For richer, for poorer might be for what some people were going to say, because some people who are poor are not going to get as much money as the richer people. So could we question whether levelling up is going to work in that respect? Hopefully levelling up will work. We'll wait and see on that. Zach, what did you take away from the budget by Kwasi Kwarteng yesterday? What did you make of some of the policies he announced?
Yeah, it was quite the budget, or should we say mini? It's not. I don't even know how you even call it a mini budget, to be fair, Charlie, because it wasn't even a mini budget. It was quite a big budget, if you want to describe it in that terms, in many ways. But yeah, it was the first major physical announcement of a Liz Truss government, and I have to say, there was a lot in there. It was the most radical tax-cutting budget that I've ever seen for quite a long time. I think this is the biggest one since the 70s, when the Maggie Thatcher's Chancellor was in charge. I think it was Nigel Lawson, wasn't it? If I remember rightly at the time. So yeah, it's a big mini budget, the biggest mini budget, let's just say, in that. But there's plenty of things that was included. I have to say, some things that I totally think are very interesting, nevertheless. Let's start with income tax, cutting the basic rate to 19% from April 2023. This has come forward a year early. That was going to be done in April 2024. Some people suggested at the time that was they were doing it to bribe people in an election. Make your own consumptions up, whether that is the case on that one as well. The national insurance rise that was gone into effect in April is no longer taking place. That has been overturned. Now it's down. The national insurance has gone down by 1.25p in the pounds, meaning the original the national insurance that was before April is now back into effect, basically. So that's been reversed as well. The new health and social care levy is not going to be reintroduced. It's going to be changed. Instead, that funding is still apparently going to be the same, but it's going to be obviously integrated into move to social care quite quickly, from what I understand. As well, corporation tax plans increase from 90 to 25% is now also not going ahead as well. And that's pretty much not surprising, given what Liz Truss has said in her leadership campaign. Whether that will have too much effect on business investment, I don't think it probably will, in fairness as well. Now, another controversial one that was introduced as well was the benefits. The rule around universal credit being tightened by reducing benefits if people don't feel search commitment. So basically, if you work, say, 12 hours a week, you now expect to work 16, 15 hours a week. Otherwise, you have to look for other ways to fulfill your work hours or have your benefits reduced. That's, I have to say, is quite a policy announcement by the Conservatives. Job seekers over 50 get action time with work coaches to help them return to the job market. Because obviously the government have identified that over 50s are struggling for work at the moment. and they think that's an area that they should be looking to target in terms of getting people in the system. IR35 rules have been simplified as well. New startup companies able to raise up to £250,000 in the scheme, giving tax relief to investors. Share options for employees doubled from 30,000 to 60,000. The stamp duty, this is one of the big things that wasn't out. It was a stamp duty cut, which is paid when people buy a property, has been cut. No stamp duty on the first £250,000 for first-time buyers. That rises to £425,000. That's gone straight into effect, by the way. So that means 200,000 people will be taken out of stamp duty, according to government. Obviously, we talk about the energy. That's estimated to cost £60 billion now for the first 6 months. If that's the case, then that's a lot of money that's been spending on that one. Now, another controversial one, which I have to say I do not agree with, I think it's a total tone-deaf plan, is limiting bankers' bonuses. And that reduction has been lifted, and it's unlimited as well now. So bankers' bonuses is now officially being scrapped. The limit on that has been scrapped. I think it's totally a crazy idea and tone deaf at this time, personally, in my view, given the fact that it just benefits the rich a bit more while suffering on the poor as well. Interesting on this one, VAT-free shopping for overseas visitors. So let me get this straight. We Brits will have to pay VAT, but the overseas visitors won't. Okay, so that makes sense. The government are discussing setting up infrastructure zones in 38 local areas. Tax cuts and liberated plane offer to release land, investment zones as well. New legislation cut off plane rules. That's apparently in the plan as well. And also, I think it's something they mentioned in the income tax, the top rate, which the very richest pay, which is 45%, is also going to be scrapped as well. So the top rate of 45%, which the richest pay on the income tax, has also been scrapped as well. So yeah, this is a very cutting heavy investing, what they call not really mini budget. It's a giant budget, if I want to call it a giant mini budget. But I personally think it was such a tone deaf budget, personally, in my view. It's a lot of borrowing, it's a lot of tax cutting, a lot of borrowing as well. I think it makes Jeremy Corbyn look like a conservative, in my view, in terms of what's been announced. And I think it's the fact they're borrowing as well is, whilst not taxing the richest, in fact, they're reducing the taxes. Most of the policies are actually being, the wealthiest are benefiting from this budget, which I think is, again, completely tone deaf, in my view. Now, Liz Truss is obviously saying, if we do all these tax cuts, people are going to invest. I can't see it. I'm sorry. This is the most tone deaf budget it's been in a long time. Okay, the fact that most of the tax cuts have been put onto the rich, this is trickle down economics in action, no doubt about it. And the fact that the poorest are going to continue struggling in the winter, whilst the richest get their little lucrative tax cuts. 45% of it, according to the Resolution Foundation of all the policies announced, will go to the richest people in terms of tax cuts. And I think it's disgrace, quite frankly. Like I said, it's tone deaf. It's disgrace. It shows that Conservatives only care about their own donor friends and stuff like that. And it's just extraordinary that they've gone down this path of massive tax cuts, lots of massive borrowing in the short term and potentially in the long term as well. And it's not surprising to see that the markets didn't react very well to the budget on Friday. You saw the pound against the dollar crash to its lowest level in, many years, Charlie. $1.07, I think the pound was the dollar or something like that. So the market clearly wasn't seen to impress. We also saw government bonds and yields, Charlie, go to their highest borrowing prices in years. I think it was a 3.5% increase for 2 years, 1 month, 6 years, 2 years, 10 years, whatever, how many years you can count it. But yeah, government borrowing has gone up. The cost of it to borrow has increased, and yet somehow we're going to end up borrowing even more over the next few months. It's quite extraordinary, in my view. It's absolutely extraordinary. And there's even talks of the Bank of England having to do an emergency interest rate increase because of the amount of borrowing that the government are doing. And yeah, there's talks now that the interest rates could reach 5% next year. even if we do have a slightly lower inflation figure, interest rates are going to be at 5%. That is potentially extraordinary, and that's the own actions of a government that decided to sell it all off to the rich, whilst bugger off for the poor. Nothing done for them. Quite extraordinary.
It seems like echoes of comments made by Rishi Sunak coming in now on that leadership contest. Remember when he said about inflation, the fact that he wanted to keep it higher before lowering it? That's the plan that obviously Sunak had, and obviously Truss had the opposite with a tax cut. So very interesting to see that. Well, this is what the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, had to say as he axes higher income tax for top earners in the mini budget. Have a listen to this.
High tax rates damage Britain's competitiveness. They reduce the incentive to work, to invest, and to start a business. And the higher the tax, the more ways people seek to avoid them, or work elsewhere, or simply work less, rather than putting their time and effort to more creative and productive ends. Take the additional rate of income tax. At 45%, it is currently higher than the headline top rate in G7 countries like the US and Italy. And it is even higher than social democracies like Norway. But I'm not going to cut the additional rate of tax today, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to abolish it altogether. From April the 23rd, we will have a single higher rate of income tax of 40%. This will simplify the tax system and make Britain more competitive. It will reward enterprise and work. It will incentivize growth. It will benefit the whole economy and the whole country. And Mr. Speaker, after all, this only returns us to the top rate we had for 20 years, including the entire time the opposition was last in power.
Okay, that was what Kwasi Kwarteng, the Chancellor, had to say there in that budget. Certainly a more of a raspier Chancellor than the last one we had in terms of Rishi Sunak being very underwhelming, in my view, behind the dispatch box. Kwasi Kwarteng roaring at the opposition there. So clearly interesting. Please comment down below, guys, what you make to that mini budget and what you agree with policies. Politics is certainly back after the Queen's funeral. After the national period of mourning, and it was back with a bang with that House of Commons statement from the Chancellor there. Moving on now to the next news story now. I'm going to talk about the war in Ukraine now. Now, this week we had a major escalation of the conflict with Russian President Vladimir Putin making yet another, should I say, moronic address to the Russian people and a barbaric address to the European continent, saying that he deploys 300,000 basically he wants to deploy 300,000 troops, or 30,000 troops technically. He wants to announce a mass mobilization on the public in Russia. It's a big move. He said it during his address that he wants more people, more recruitment in terms of driving up his support for the war in Ukraine, his invasion, that we still call it, even though he calls it a special military operation. Putin wants to accelerate the Ukraine war to new heights. This week alone, Russia have been at the forefront of more war crimes. I'm just going to show you now, guys, exactly the live feed we're getting through at the moment from the war in Ukraine. At the current moment in time, at least 730 protesters have been detained in Russia after several of them joined an anti-war demonstration once again in Moscow and St. Petersburg. This is the biggest protest since the start of the war. Russian protesters have been defying their president in St. Petersburg. It was literally the biggest protest since the start of the invasion, several people being arrested. And a new law signed by Vladimir Putin says Russian troops who refuse to fight, desert, disobey, or surrender to the enemy could now face a jail sentence up to 10 years. Russian media reports the law will be approved by Parliament earlier next week. Zach, what do you make to that policy announcement by Vladimir Putin also the other day?
Let's start off first of all with the speech that Putin made on, I think it was, where was it made? The Thursday, I think it was he made the speech. He was due to do it Wednesday night, decided not to do it for whatever reason as well. But on Thursday, Vladimir Putin decided to put his ego on television again for a national address. He claimed that obviously the West was waging a war against Russia, cobblers, as we know about that. It's always Ukraine is the bad people, evil, la la la. Nazis are going around, neo-Nazis, whatever. It's all cobblers. We all know that. And he also announced as well that referendums were going to take place in certain areas of Ukraine territory that was held by the Russian people as well. So let me remind you of what referendums are actually taking place. These are in areas where Russian control Ukrainian territory. So in Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia are going to poll for sham referendums. Let's just call it sham referendums because that's what they are, Charlie. They're not legitimate. They've been forced on by the people. You can tell some of the measures have been forced on. But the fact is that there are actually armed police officers going to door to door in some of these regions, areas, and actually getting people to forcibly vote, presumably one way or the other, for to join part of Russia and be annexed by Russia, as well. So these referendums, which are not referendums, they're just illegal votes, are to determine whether these areas want to be part of the Russian Federation, aka join Russia and be annexed by them. So this is what's happening. We know what the results are going to be, Charlie, because the Russian officials are probably going to announce that they've all voted yes in all these areas to be part of the referendum. Probably going to rig it in that way, in terms of that. So it will be rigged in that way, and that presumably will get an announcement probably on Tuesday, where this referendum result is going to come in. And Russia will probably then use it as justification as well when they do that to try and annex these areas. Although I can't even see them trying Kherson because they're losing Kherson pretty much. As well, it's difficult to hold Kherson when you consider the fact that place has been pretty much the Ukrainians are trying to take that back quite easily, actually, in some ways, as well. But yeah, that's going to happen as well. Russia, Putin also announced a partial mobilization of some of their reserves. It's not a full mobilization, by the way. It's a partial mobilization, but it involves 300,000 of those who are in the reserves being called up to fight in the war. As you said, now that it appears that Putin's going to punish those who don't fight or don't follow it, take instructions, with 10 years in prison. As well. So yeah, it's a big escalation. Putin also said in his address as well, and we get to the most juiciest part of it, that he was not bluffing apparently when he claims that he got nuclear weapons of hell to strike if necessary to believe. I believe that's still a bluff. He keeps saying this is not a bluff. When you say it's not a bluff, it probably means it's a bluff. I wouldn't pay too much attention to what's going on there at the moment unless we see concrete evidence that Russia are preparing their nukes, which I don't think they're going to happen at the moment. But what I think is what's going to happen now is that these illegal referendums where the result will going to be rigged to yes are going to be used by Putin to justify saying that Ukraine has attacked Russian land and there'll be consequences and so. It may then Putin will then sort of use the excuse to try and use nukes in some ways as well. But it's not going to work because the Russians are losing in some of the areas, Charlie. Like I said, it's not going to work. This mobilization is going to cause more injuries to Russian people than anything else. And the reaction on the streets has been pretty clear. This has just been reported today. Like, there has been protests in many of the areas, 32 cities in Russia, Petersburg, Serbia, as well. Siberia, apologies as well. Moscow has been protesting there. There's been hundreds of arrests as well, 730 people detained today in protests. And there's actually people leaving the country as well, Charlie, from Russian-held areas, but as well to other areas such as Georgia, Ukraine, as well. I think Turkey's got a bunch of refugees that potentially come in as well. So there looks like there appears to be some sort of reaction from the Russian people about these announcements. And they are reacting, and it doesn't look good, Charlie. Let's just say that.
I know, but so what do you make to this law that's been signed by the president of Russia, President Putin, saying Russian troops who refuse to fight, desert, or disobey or surrender to the enemy could face 10 years in prison.
It's going to totally backfire because the Russian morale is really low, and it just results in more of their people getting killed. Putin will lose more people than gain from it, if anything. So this is a risky, totalitarian, quite frankly, terrible move that's going to totally backfire on him regardless anyway.
Yeah.
Really.
Also, as well, in some more news, Russia's Deputy Defense Minister Dmitry Bergov, who said in charge of military logistics since the beginning of the Ukraine invasion, has been dismissed from his post. He's been replaced by Colonel Gen Mikhail Mintsev, the head of the National Defense Management Center, who oversaw Russia's siege of Mariupol. So another one's been in charge there. Now, also as well, China supports all efforts to conduct the peaceful resolution of the crisis in Ukraine. Its Foreign Minister Wang Yi said to the United Nations General Assembly on Saturday. Clearly, it seems like China are interested in Taiwan more than Russia and Ukraine. Also, as well, the queue between the border of Russia and Georgia is approximately 6 miles long. It's reported that some people have waited more than 20 hours to cross. A number of border crossings from Russia into Finland has doubled in recent days. So a huge immigration and refugee crisis happening at the Finnish border as Russians flee the country after Vladimir Putin's mobilization order. Oh, God. Just more in bad news as well. And you think as well that Volodymyr Zelensky told Ukrainians occupied territories to hide from Russian mobilization as well. What have you made to some of Russia's recent war crimes as well?
Yeah, there obviously we've seen plenty of war crimes being held. I mean, we've obviously seen the graves and everything like that. We saw bodies piled up everywhere. They're not surprising in some ways, but they're also shocking when you really see what they've been doing. It's been a horror show in terms of what we've seen with regards to bodies. Lots of war crimes have been committed on this as well, and there's lots of areas where the Russian government really need to be held to account and be taken to court in, because the acts have been pretty barbaric in many areas as well. It's a really brutal sight. Be seeing all these mass graves in areas where the Ukrainians just took the territory back. It really is.
It's in my opinion, absolutely ridiculous from President Putin. Vladimir Putin of Russia will be held to account for his actions, and we know for full well that the more dangerous he gets, he will go nuclear, no doubt. He'll bluff the world. People say he'll bluff. Maybe he's bluffing at the moment, but the truth is, Zach, he could launch these at any time. He did say on his address that he's got the most powerful nuclear weapons and his most powerful nuclear arsenal in the world. And do you think these missiles are just fakes?
I think he's. I would take whatever he says with a pinch of salt, like I have all the time. I think he's bluffing. I don't believe a word what he says. Very simple.
Yeah, I think we could all agree that Vladimir Putin is certainly a dictator in his own right, causing this war in Ukraine and announcing that mass mobilization. It's clear to me that he doesn't not want to give up in the country that he so invades the most. This is what he had to say the other day after announcing the mass mobilization. Report from the BBC shows this message.
More than 1,000 protesters have been arrested in cities across Russia, according to a human rights organization, after President Putin announced that hundreds of thousands of military reservists could be called up to fight in Ukraine. It's the first mobilization of Russian civilians since World War II. International flights have started to sell out as people left the country. Russia has been losing ground in eastern Ukraine in recent weeks as Ukrainian troops recapture some parts. In his televised address this morning, President Putin accused the West of occupying Ukraine and engaging in nuclear blackmail. He again warned he'd use all means to protect Russia, including nuclear weapons. Our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg has this report from Moscow.
Under pressure in Ukraine, Russia's president has chosen the path that is most familiar to him. Escalation.
Считаю необходимым поддержать
To defend our motherland, its sovereignty and territorial integrity, for the security of our people and on the liberated territories, it is necessary to support the proposal of the Defense Ministry and Chief of General Staff to announce a partial mobilization of military reservists.
7 months after invading Ukraine, the Kremlin is calling up 300,000 reservists to support what it still calls the special military operation. And from Russia's commander-in-chief, this threat to the West.
Хочу напомнить, что наша страна
Our country, too, has different weapons of destruction. In some cases, they are more modern than those of NATO. If the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, then to defend Russia and our people, we shall, of course, use all means at our disposal. I am not bluffing.
So why the threat and why now? Well, in a few days' time, the Kremlin will try to annex a whole swathe of Ukrainian territory. Vladimir Putin's saber-rattling sends a message to Ukraine and to the West. Don't attack. Don't try to take those areas back. As news of mobilization spread, there were reports that flights out of Russia were selling out fast, amid concern that men of fighting age would soon not be allowed to leave the country.
наверное, опасаюсь, что
I'm worried this is just the start, Sergei tells me, and that there could be full mobilization.
Если требует,
But Margarita says that if our leaders demand this, we must do our duty. I trust Putin 100%. Later, the president met his defense minister. They've decided on mobilization because they're short of troops. So short that in prison camps across Russia, this mercenary chief, a close Putin ally, has been recruiting inmates to fight in Ukraine, promising them their freedom if they serve 6 months with his group, Wagner, and survive. When Vilena went to visit her husband in prison a few days ago, she was told the husband, a convicted murderer, wasn't there.
я говорю, как вы? 13.
I said, what do you mean, not here? He's been here for 13 years and suddenly he's gone? They told me they had no more information. A few days later, he called me from a Ukrainian number. I know for sure that my husband is in Ukraine.
Всё, они его отправили туда незаконно.
Even if he agreed to go there, he was sent illegally. Sending convicts into combat is against the law.
Now, the Kremlin will be sending reservists to Ukraine. But in Moscow tonight, a protest against mobilization. Hundreds have been detained across the country. Not everyone in Russia is willing to stay silent about Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine and his war with the West. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
Well, thank you there to that the report there from Steve Rosenberg on the BBC. I just want to say that Nyan Vanya in Russian means stop this war. Is these brave people were going out there, Zach, protesting, biggest protest since the start of the war, and then they're getting arrested by the police. It shows you that it's pure dictatorship in that country.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it shows how much that the Russia wants to control the agenda, really, and make the people think a certain way. I mean, once you hear the outside sources, they obviously have a trickle effect in within the cities, and it's a lot of people are just so unhappy with what's happening that they're going out to protest and yet being met with police resistance as well for daring to do it. So. Yeah, it's quite. I don't think Putin has got his country under control at all, in many ways. And I'm going to mention something later on about another one that don't appear to have their country in control, as well. But I'll get there when we get there.
Stay tuned for the Great British Star and Red Devil coming up later in the show for more information on nominations. But I'm sure we'll have plenty on that. Moving on now to Martha's Vineyard in the United States. In the United States news now, with border crisis ripping out of control in the country as more migrants cross than ever before. Now, it was emerged that the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, and I think Texas Governor Greg Abbott, I'm pretty sure there was some news on this the other day, but have apparently been flying migrants to a place called Martha's Vineyard, which is in Massachusetts. It just sits near just south of Cape Cod, and it's apparently been in the news. Zach, what do you make to this interesting news story?
Yeah, that's another thing that's developing as well. The agenda has sort of turned to immigration in America because of these actions that Governor Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott, Republican governors of Florida and Texas, have been doing. It's I think quite a barbaric political act of interest to them. But yeah, what they've been basically doing is flying migrants that don't even come to into the state as well. They don't have to even come to the state to be flown out. That basically they've been flying. They're basically immigrants have been trying to get their way into Florida or Texas. And Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis to make a point that the border is out of control. Has flown these immigrants that don't have to even go to Florida or Texas. They can just be in somewhere else, plan to go to Florida or Texas, and they can just be taken away. In fairness as well, they've been flown to Massachusetts. They've even been flown to Washington D.C., New York, Delaware, and even outside Harris's residence as well. So, yeah. There's clearly some political posturing in these moves, which I don't really seem to like, because I don't like migrants being used as a political tool, really, in terms of what they do. I'm not a fan of this at all. I think it's a cruel act, quite frankly, and I think it's just a waste of time. Although it could also be illegal, who knows? As well, so I think this is all just a bit of silly acts. I just think this is just blatantly political what they're doing. There's nothing serious about what they're doing. They're just doing political uproar to be found. I know they're trying to get the conversation about immigration and the border, which is what Republicans hope to do as we come into November, a couple of months now until the midterms. But I think this is just all a political posturing act that is being used to cruelly affect human beings. And there may be a point about the border, but when you're trying to people out of states migrants with you, that's not even in your state, and taking them away, flying them away to use the policing resources, I just think it's a waste of resources and a waste of time, quite frankly. It's just a bunch of political posturing that makes that affects humans quite a lot. So it's quite a wicked act they're trying to do.
I'm sure Frank Sinatra's "Fly Me to the Moon" would be playing for some of these people who are flying around the United States at the moment. I wonder if one of them went to the Kennedy Space Center and planned a mission to the moon. Think Apollo 11 back in 1969 there. So, certainly very interesting. We'll comment down below what you make to the situation with the border crisis in America. And also over here, 31,000 illegal immigrants crossing the channel this year. Is Suella Braverman going to do something to stop them? We'll wait and see in the coming days. Moving on now to the second part of the Charlie Tolhurst Show, which is the sport briefing, talking about all things sport. There we go on the titles. The sport briefing has appeared on the Rolling News headlines there. We're going to move over now and talk. We're going to firstly actually talk about the football, because England played yesterday and lost 1-0 against the Euro 2020 winners, Italy. Remember last year when they scored? I'm not sure if it was on penalties or in extra time, whatever. But remember, it's coming to Rome. Came to the Euros. We lost again, Zach, didn't we, to the Italians?
Yeah, and as well, it wasn't in great style as well. It wasn't great style as well. We had, although England had the most possession, most passes, and the most accuracy of passes, at the end of the day, Italy had less shots, but just as much shots on target. And that resulted as well in pretty much their gameplay plan was much better. And in the second half, it was clear to see that. So it was a 1-0 loss eventually with Giacomo Raspadoni Drori scoring the goal in the 68th minute. And that knocked England out of the Nations League for the season as well. 2 points now on total. No way back to get past Germany. England have been relegated from Group League A to League B now for next season's sort of season following after that Nations League as well. So it's been a miserable campaign in the Nations League for England. Plenty of losses. Quite frankly, most of them we could have at least got draws or even wins out of them. But it's been a torrid time, I think, for England over these last few days. And it's put into question Southgate's ability to run the team. I mean, next match is going to be a crucial one. Germany as well on the 26th of September, a 7:45 kickoff. That's on Channel 4, by the way. This is going to be the last match for England. I think it's the last match for England. I could be wrong. Officially in the schedule so far, before the Qatar World Cup in November, 21st, where England take on Iran. But it's there's got to be questions running about Southgate's style of play, how the players, it turns out as well. But the fan reaction was pretty understandable, given the fact he was booed off at the end of the game. It's clear that the fans are starting to get a little bit tested now with him and the results. It's not looking good as well. But England lost 1-0 today as well. It's not a good result for England again as well. But there's been a few other matches. Other home nations have been playing today, and there's still actually, I think, some that are still playing at the moment. Most of them playing. Let's talk about the ones today. Scotland and the Republic of Ireland have been facing off today in their Nation League. Scotland came from 1-0 down to win 2-1 against Ireland as well. Scotland are now almost guaranteed to get through if they continue. If they win the next match, if they win the next match, they're probably going to get promoted to League A and probably get a place in the Euro 2024 playoffs as well. If they win against Ukraine next time out, or get a draw. So Scotland have the ball in their court in terms of what could happen, but they need to win to be able to get into that qualifier.
Just a quick question for all the listeners: is Ukraine actually playing at their stadiums despite the war going on? Are they playing remotely?
So I'm just going to check where they're actually playing for the next game. So they are actually playing. Yeah, they are actually playing in Ukraine. They're playing in the Stadion Kraleville in Joseph Planklinko. They're actually playing in Poland. Actually, Charlie, they're going to play in Poland. On Tuesday. It's not in Ukraine, but also in Poland
because of the war as well, because of the ongoing invasion.
The last match of their campaign. So that'll be happening on Tuesday. We're playing England, Germany on Monday. And just go through other results today. Northern Ireland, other home nation. Northern Ireland won 2-1 against Kosovo. It's a critical win, I think, I have to say, for Northern Ireland. And they're now on 5 points. They could take second. They could still get relegated on Tuesday if they lose to Cyprus, actually. So they could still get relegated on Tuesday. But it will be interesting to see what happened, because I think it's a very eventful league table as well. And in Wales, let me go to see the results of what happened with Wales, because they did lose. They did actually lose. They lost 2-1 against Belgium on Thursday as well. So Belgium beating Wales in the match there as well. And what the result is pretty much Wales are almost guaranteed probably going to get going from League A to League B as well if they lose the next match, which I believe is, let me go to here as well. They are facing, I think they're facing, they're facing the Netherlands next time out. It'll be a difficult match. They are the league leaders, Netherlands. They just need to draw to be able to, win the group. So yeah, crucial few games for some of our home nations as well, especially the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, as well, coming up in the next few days.
Yeah, forget the men's team. The women's team won the Euros, so there you go. Please, men's team, improve. And
Yeah.
Premier League action also returns next week. Quick little view of some of the weekend's fixtures. Highlights will include the Manchester derby as well, which takes place
London
next weekend.
on Saturday.
Yeah, next weekend taking place. That will be at the Etihad Stadium. Manchester City will play Manchester United as well. North London derby of Arsenal, Tottenham, Crystal Palace and Chelsea as well on the Saturday, and on the Sunday it will be Leeds and Aston Villa. And the Monday night football, can Brendan Rodgers save his skin? Leicester at home to Nottingham Forest. Zach, what do you make quickly to these Premier League matches for next week?
Yeah, crucial game to come up. Arsenal-Tottenham is going to be one of the big key matches, I think, of the weekend, to see which one can keep in the title race. It's probably the biggest match of the season, I would say, so far. Arsenal v Spurs, the potential for that. And obviously there's the Manchester derby, a very classic game as well. Can Manchester United do a shocker over Manchester City? Who knows as well. West Ham take on Wolves in the Saturday night football. That West Ham are under a little bit of pressure at the moment. As well, I mean, look, they're pretty much 18th in the table at the moment. Need to improve their form as well. Yeah, as you can see, the table at 18th, and it's the bottom two on Monday night. Nottingham Forest against Leicester City. I suspect there's going to be so much pressure on both these two teams going in to Monday. They are the bottom two teams, and either of them could result in big trouble if any of those two teams lose on Monday night. So not this Monday night, but next Monday night. So yeah, that's a game to look forward to. Not this week, but next week as well.
Yeah, lots of people questioning the future for Brendan Rodgers. Is he the right man to lead Leicester City? Don't know. That's all I can say. Moving on now to Formula One. Back to my home sport now. And of course, Formula One have released a new calendar. 24 races, the longest season in history in the sport. We used to have just 17 races in 2009. We're going up to 24 next season. Is this pretty crazy? Yes, it is for haulage companies, but it's promising. Action-packed racing, Las Vegas coming onto the calendar. We're going to have at least 3 races in the Americas next year in the United States. Probably 4 or 5 in the Americas next year, I'm sure. Mexico, if that's on there. Also Brazil. Zach, big calendar, isn't it, for next season?
Yeah, it's a big calendar. It's the biggest in the F1 history. 24 races. And the reason for these 24 races is we've got 3 races, new additions onto the calendar for next season as well. China and Qatar are going to return to the calendar. Qatar is part of a new, I think, was it 10-year deal?
Yeah, that's the new one.
Yeah, so obviously they signed it in 2021. They decided, obviously, there wasn't going to be a Qatar Grand Prix this year, but there will be a Qatar Grand Prix from next year, a permanent addition to the calendar for next year.
October the 8th, and that will be back at Losail again.
Yeah, or at Losail as well. That's quite crucial to hear that it's going to be at Losail as well. China is going to return to the calendar on the 16th of April after a few years off. It's not had a race there since 2020 when COVID struck, and then the way the government held managed COVID there, interestingly as well. It will kick off on the 5th of March with the Bahrain Grand Prix. There's a 2-week gap between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. A couple of other things to note as well. Las Vegas is also on the calendar, by the way. That's the other new race. That's on the 18th of November. That's the second to last race ahead of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix on the 26th of November as well. A few other changes I want to point out as well. Azerbaijan now moves ahead of Miami. That's going to be for the 30th of April as well. The Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix moves to May. That's on the 21st of May. So that's now round 7 behind Miami as well. that's important to note. The Spanish Grand Prix now moves behind the Monaco Grand Prix. That's another interesting change as well. In terms of that, that's all now be on the 4th of June behind the.
And that will form a triple header as well. You can see you got Emilia Romagna, Monaco, and then Spain all following for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, logistically, that's good actually. If you think about it, that's all a short distance as well, even though it's a triple header. Couple other things to note: the Austrian Grand Prix moves ahead of the British Grand Prix again. The Belgian Grand Prix is now the final race before the summer break, rather than the first race back. That will be held. The Dutch Grand Prix gets that slot now, and a couple other things. I just want to see. That's pretty much it in terms of what I'm seeing at the moment. As well. So not really too much else to know about. It's 24 races. It starts in Bahrain the 5th of March of 2023 and ends with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix on the 26th of November 2023. Another year, still a year in advance. We will talk about this. Lots of things could change by then.
Plenty of things could be changed, and Max Verstappen leads the World Championship. Could he wrap the championship up in Singapore? Very good question. He only needs, I think, 24 more points to finish ahead of Ferrari Charles Leclerc to win the World Championship. But I'm sure he'll probably win it in maybe a race or two's time, more likely, given that, really. He's dominating the championship. 5 wins in a row. The Red Bull driver's unstoppable. Moving on now to the NASCAR Cup Series. Last week raced at Bristol. I do actually need to watch the highlights because I haven't actually seen the race. But this race was actually, I think, part of the round of 16. So drivers will be fighting for playoff places. And I do actually have the results, I believe, up here for you. In fact, I do actually have the results up. And Zach, a win for Chris Buescher.
Yes. All 3 races, I believe, Charlie, went without a playoff driver winning. But so now we've gone from 16 to 12 now from in that race. Chris Buescher was the winner of that one. Ahead of Chase Elliott, was probably the highest running playoff driver in that as well. William Byron was 3rd, Christopher Bell 4th, Carl Larson 5th, Ross Chastain was 6th, AJ Allmendinger 7th, Cole Custer 8th, Denny Hamlin 9th, and Kevin Harvick was 10th. And what that meant for the playoff stand, Charlie, was the following: is that Chase and the following drivers advanced to the playoff. That was Austin Cindric, Daniel Suarez, Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe, Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Kyle Larson, Ross Chastain, Joe Logano, and Chase Elliott. The ones that did not make it through and got knocked out were Kevin Harvick, Austin Dillon, Kyle Busch, and Tyler Reddick. All got eliminated from the playoff. Have now been eliminated from the playoffs. We are now down from 16 to 12 drivers, and it all kicks off this weekend with Texas. And as you can see, qualifying has happened today for the race tomorrow. Qualifying results. I'll find it somewhere.
I've got it up now. Brad Keselowski will be on pole. Joey Logano starts 2nd, and William Byron will be 3rd on the grid in the number 24 Chevrolet Camaro. So big race tomorrow.
Yeah, William Byron with a good result for him, 3rd position. Tyler Reddick 4th. Michael McDowell, wild result, 5th position here. Chase Elliott 6th. Austin is 7th. Hamlin 8th. Carl Larson 9th. And Daniel Suarez 10th as well. In the Xfinity Series, there's a race ongoing at the moment. It's the Already Auto Parts 300. Joe Nemechek is currently leading on lap 81. I think they're under caution at the moment because look at the gaps. You can see the big gaps in here. I think they're definitely under caution at the moment. Ty Gibbs, Noah Gragson 3rd, Brandon Jones 4th, Landon Castle 5th, Daniel Hemrick 6th, AJ Austin Allmendinger 7th, Austin Hill 8th, Justin Hillgard 9th, and Jake Berry is in 10th position at the moment. I don't believe the Truck Series is racing this weekend. No, they are back next weekend at Talladega, so they are not racing this week. It's Xfinity Series race are racing this weekend as well. The Xfinity race is going to be a Cup Series race actually. It's going to be at Talladega, as I said, Charlie, as well next weekend. And their race tomorrow at Texas is at 8:30 UK time tomorrow as well. with Brad Keselowski on the pole.
And also tune in this weekend for the penultimate meeting of the British Touring Car Championship, heading to Silverstone. I'm going to quickly go over this because this is the penultimate round. We have had qualifying. Rory Butcher will start on pole position for Toyota. The Toyota Gazoo Racing UK driver is on the pole for pole position for tomorrow's race. He will start ahead of Jake Hill, who is in second position in the BMW there. That is, of course, the BMW ran by, I think, MB Motorsport, pretty sure. Adam Morgan third, Tom Ingram fourth, Dan Camish fifth, Ricky Collard sixth, Ash Sutton seventh, Gordon Shedden eighth, Dan Lloyd ninth, and Colin Turkington picked top 10. Zach, what do you make to this?
Yeah, Rory Butcher pretty much got the best run that he could in qualifying, as well ahead of Jake Hill. Decent qualified. I think we'll have a mix-up weekend, although in terms of the racing, it's going to be all on the line on the penultimate weekend as well. Certainly in terms of what is required as well. Ash, let me just go through the standings actually, because Colin Turkington is leading the standings at the moment. Rory Butcher's in sixth position, so it probably won't matter too much in points to him. But it's tight at the top between Ash Sutton and Colin Turkington again. They previously used to be two champions together as well, from what I remember as well. But Tom Ingram and Jake Hill have a chance in this, I have to say. The top four all can still win the championship in some ways, depending on what happens. It's going to be a mixed-up grid, I have to say, as well. But yeah, a lot of action ahead with 3 races tomorrow as well.
Yeah, and also Brands Hatch in October. God, I think the season, I'm not entirely sure when it finishes. Let's get the calendar up now to have a look. I think the season is actually finishing. Let me have a look here. Final race, 8th to the 9th of October. Blimey, couple of weeks. We're wrapping the touring cars up, along with also the Ginetta GT4 Juniors, Porsche Carrera Cup GP, and many other racing. It's going to be very interesting. Keep you updated on the BTCC coming up very soon. Time now for Charlie's good news. Whoa, Superdry gets my mention this week. Not that because I bought a Superdry hoodie the other day, before you ask. I got a hoodie from Superdry. I'm talking about hoodies as well in a minute on Superdry. Talking about these hoodies actually a good thing to get. Superdry have actually announced some big news this week that I would like to share with you. A company that are based heavily in the UK. They make a lot of style for Japanese artists. They have announced changes to the way they're going to make their denim. Yes. You might wear jeans. I'm wearing jeans right now. But Superdry have announced changes to what they call Organic September. And now Superdry put out a statement today, or I put out a press release today or the other day to say that from winter 2022, 100% of their cotton in Superdry jeans is certified organic. And in Organic September, the brand has pledged of all of its pure cotton clothing will be organic by 2025. Organic cotton saves up to 87% of water and a 14% lower carbon footprint. Conventional cotton will use 16% of the world's pesticides across 2.5% of the land, destroying all soil in which the cotton plants grow. Organic cotton uses 0 pesticides and without these harmful chemicals, and quality and preserved generations. Well, Superdry says working to 12,000 cotton farmers this year, helping them to convert in practices. It's donated more than 100 million cotton seeds. Also saying by 2025, help more than 20,000 farmers. So, yeah, very interesting Superdry. I'm going to get Zach's reaction. That's a Cheltenham-based brand. Superdry also sell plenty other stuff as well. Interestingly, you could not just get Superdry clothing. Men's Superdry also do some pretty cool clothing if you want them. Jeans, jumpers. And also as well, guys, if you're into your hoodies, Superdry are actually a great brand for hoodies because I actually think they do really nice clothing. I've got a link on the website here. I'll link that down in the description. There's actually a section on sale here that gives you some prices. They are very expensive, but these are some of the hoodies you can get from Superdry all on the men's hoodie and sweatshirt website. Here you go, got some of the options here. You even got this hoodie that I'm just going to show you here, which is Script the Mountain style, having a interesting climb up the mountains. This one here is inspired by the New York billboards, with its crossing lines and script mountain style. Do you think this men's hoodie will be for you? $34.99 is what it starts from, and it is a good hoodie, I think, certainly. So, what do you make to Superdry's latest move?
Interesting. Obviously, trying to be more in terms of environmentally sustainable, and obviously use less animal products as well. I mean that's pretty good. Using more the cotton way. Obviously, they want to be environmentally good, and obviously they don't want to look like they're coming out furs from killed animals and stuff like that. That's pretty much normal practice of what these providers are doing, and I think that's pretty decent, to be fair, and very thoughtful, protecting the environment in terms of animals and everything like that. It's very important. I think I do agree with those sort of moves, and I welcome that sort of announcement from them.
What did you make to, and also as well, what do you make to hoodies in general? Do you think like hoodies should be more popular, like in streetwear, for example?
Oh, I don't. I mean, yeah, maybe. It's good for the winter month. I've actually got I wouldn't call it a hoodie, but I've got like an additional top on at the moment because it's starting to get a little bit cold, winter months. By the way, I know you're wearing jeans. You said I'm actually wearing joggers. Actually, while I'm sitting down here, actually, look, if I'm actually wearing joggers. Oh, I think I've got my computer down there, but I'm wearing joggers as well, which I like to wear in the house because I normally wear my jeans outside whenever I have to go out or anything. That's much more of a comfortable, formal, casual look outside. But yeah, in terms of the costume move, I agree with it pretty much as well. And we're going to see a lot more of these, I think, during the winter months where everyone wants to feel warm. I think,
and also organic cotton probably as well.
Yeah, probably. And everyone else is going to put their coats on as well because it's going to get a little bit cold. Oh,
and the politicians will be wearing their overcoats, so I'm sure there'll be.
Yeah, we'll probably see that as well.
Plenty of them wearing that. But yeah, no, I mean that hoodie I showed you there, guys, is an example of what this winter is going to look like. A comfortable clothing. I am wearing, of course, jeans as well. I just wear them around the house. Even around the house. I'm not a tracksuit or jogger guy, so yeah, that's what I see. But moving on now, we're going to talk all about the latest newspaper headlines now. And boy, do we have a lot to get through.
Oh, do.
So let's start. I will update this because that was taken from earlier. So live on YouTube, it's the Charlie Tolhurst Show. Here's the newspapers. The Sunday Telegraph goes with the headline, Southgate vows to fight on. An interesting headline. And that was actually taken from a sport page.
Yeah, that's the back page. They're in the back page, interestingly.
The back page, maybe they should call it the Sunday Back Page Telegraph. If that is the interesting name. The Sunday People goes for exclusive home from Putin held to a McMuffin. Brit prisoner of war freedom, I'm loving it. And also Strictly Come Dancing returns this weekend. The Mirror goes, Harry, my Sandra's COVID hell. It reveals that Harry Redknapp's wife was actually seriously ill after contracting coronavirus. Iran, the Independent goes for Iran vows crackdown as protests grow. Also, budget tax breaks to affluent Tory areas. The Observer goes for Labour leader and leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, unveiling green growth plan to counter Truss's tax. The Express goes for Chancellor, you ain't seen nothing yet. And the Daily Star goes with the headline, Green-Eyed Monster. Zach, what do you make to the latest newspaper headlines?
The Green-Eyed Monster, God almighty. I don't really see much green. I see more blue in that. The Telegraph have gone for their back page, interestingly, to show off from this one. I don't know if that's a mistake or not. It's a bit interesting to see the back pages of that. I must admit that's a surprising move in some ways. But let's just go with their sport headline for now, because obviously let's talk about Southgate vowing to fight on. Based on their losses in the UEFA Nation League, obviously their 1-0 loss against Italy, they're obviously the loss against Hungary, Germany in the first one, which obviously they're facing against on Monday. They're obviously Southgate's under a little bit of pressure, but not surprisingly, he's gonna be in the spotlight in terms of having to get the results back round as well. It's really critical for Southgate to improve that. And also, the Telegraph also goes for the bizarre ending to today's women's cricket with England against India. India won in a bizarre fashion with let me best describe this is right. You do a run, you go half across the line, and then you hit the wicket. You do a run, you hit the bowl, do a run out, with a bizarre way of going over the line, holding it in your hand, and then hitting the stumps. Basically, that's what India did to win their match today against the England women. A very controversial rule that's still in place, but it was legal despite the fact it looked awful optics, and they won by I think it was 100 runs really, as well in that match. So yeah, I have to say a bit of a weird move overall by that one, but yeah, that was a bit strange. The Sunday people go for this is actually a really lovely story if you think about it. This is Sean Piner, who was obviously stuck in Ukraine because he was held by Russian-backed separatists, actually trapped there for a long time. Russia did a prisoner exchange swap that released the Brit actually, and it appears that he's loving his life. Charlie, he's now gone to McDonald's as a sort of a welcome back, and sort of a celebration. Good for him. He deserves that, actually, to be fair. And it's been a long time coming, the fact that he's been trapped there, and he deserves to come back. So welcome home, Sean. It's great to see you back, and good to see the prisoner swap happen as well. The Mirror goes for the interesting story about how Harry Redknight's wife Sandra was seriously ill after catching COVID as well. Obviously, there was the fear that Sandra's health was not very good, and the fact that she was on the edge of really serious consequences is obviously very upsetting to see in this headline. But it's good to see that Harry Redknight's wife Sandra, who Harry dearly loves, is still going up and well, and good to see that she did survive her bout of COVID as well. The Independent goes for budget tax breaks will go to affluent Tory areas, and they're not wrong in this. Actually, there's been analysis done that suggests that it will go to the more wealthier areas as well. It will give breaks to the affluent Tory areas in the south. Open Banlieue areas from areas in the Greater Knee Labour's warn some welfare counties, including those that contain the seats of Liz Truss and her deputy, are earmarked for investment zones, where billions will be handed to businesses encouraged to invest and grow as well. And they also go on the big picture story as well. They go on the quite incredible story of people in Iran protesting against the government there as well, and against the death of Zina Amani, who was a 22-year-old woman who was killed after she was arrested and then eventually killed for not properly wearing her headscarf, actually, in this country as well. I have to say, it's been a big uprising in Iran with their protesters there as well. The president today will say that he would crack down on these protests and get control of them. Very interesting. That's going to be a very head-on battle between protesters and the government there. It feels like they're asking for regime change as well. The Observer focuses on the Labour Party conference this weekend because Starmer's have unveiled a green growth plan to counter Truss tax cut. As well, let me just go through this front page as well. Keir Starmer pledges to deliver a new era of economic growth and permanently lower energy bills by turning UK into an independent green superpower before 2030, so 8 years' time, through a massive expansion of wind and solar energy as well. He's spoken to the Observer. He said he would double the amount of onshore wind, triple solar, and more than quadruple offshore wind power as well to get to net zero and get self-sufficiency in the energy system. It's probably the most greenest policy yet the Labour Leader have come up with as well. So obviously that's going to be coming up over the week ahead. with Keir Starmer making the keynote speech on Tuesday as well. The Sunday Express have gone in for an interview with Kwasi Kwarteng. So they've gone for Chancellor. You ain't seen nothing yet. This is the what Kwasi Kwarteng said. Said more to come as this shall promise decades of dynamism. He heralded his £45 billion tax giveaway as just the start of a true blue Tory revolution. Didn't know Tory mantra was boring, but there we go as well. So that's an interview with Kwasi Kwarteng. And the Daily Star go for their very much comedy headline of the week, Green-Eyed Monster. A woman planning to marry the ghost who seduced her said the only problem with her Victorian soldier lover is that he's dead, just and nicks her pants. What a bad dream that really does sound like, Charlie. I can't imagine that mate wasting your time and thinking of that. I mean, that's a very horrible thought that this woman is thinking of. Not my cup of tea, quite frankly, Charlie. Not my cup of tea. And that is papers.
It is very interesting. So there are all the newspapers there. We'll be back next week for more newspaper headlines. In the meantime, go and check out the latest mainstream media newspaper headlines, which will be available. I think they're on air about 10:30, I think, usually. So
yeah,
keep you updated with all the latest news. They will go through on telly all the latest newspapers, including on headliners on GB News at 11 o'clock. So stay tuned for that. And also other media stations will follow at around 10:30. So time now for the Great British Star and Red Devils of the week. Now, who are we going to give nominations to? Well, I'm going to start off this week by giving the stars out. As always, the stars this week for me, well, there's no exception, but one of the stars I'm going to give is to the pallbearers at the Queen's funeral, who pulled the coffin through, walked around the country, particularly walked around London on Monday with a coffin. I just want to say to them, they done our country proud, in my view. They served us carrying the Queen's coffin. It was a very difficult job for them. I'm very happy that they made the funeral. Despite it being a somber day, they made the funeral very important to all of us, that they are the ones volunteering themselves to help out with this. And just in general, everyone who took part in the Queen's funeral, I think you also get a mention as well. You deserve a mention on my show for this. Another nomination this week. Well, interestingly, do I have to say this is a nomination? Because I think it will be interesting. Now, another nomination for the Great British Star is going to go to someone that I think really, really deserves this. And I want to bring in this to talk about... Well, actually, I really want to bring in this person because it's a very, very important thing. And the nomination for the Great British Star that I'm going to give it to this week is the people of Ukraine for their service to their country during the war, particularly with the Russian invasion, for them actually standing up to Russia, against Russia, and saying to them that this war is wrong. All the protesters in Russia get a nomination as well. The Red Devils this week, for me, are Justin Trudeau, the President, Prime Minister of Canada, for singing Bohemian Rhapsody during the Queen's funeral. Now, whilst I do like Bohemian Rhapsody, singing it on the day of the Queen's funeral is a little bit weird. I'm not sure if your voice so it's karaoke, my friend, but Justin Trudeau gets the nomination, along with, of course, you guessed it, Mad Vlad.
Yeah.
Vladimir Putin. Here he is, Mad Vlad, pictured behind a desk, looking isolated, as his country continues to bear the consequences of the Russian invasion of Ukraine with sanctions. Also, have you seen this in Russia? For anybody who's a Starbucks fan, it's not actually called Starbucks anymore. It's actually turned into the name of something you'd find at a carnival and a fairground stand. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Starbucks coffee. if you're
Stardust.
a Russian coffee, and also if you're interestingly, Russian occupied Crimea is home to, and I quote this now, Starbucks, Don Mac, and CFC. Basically, their sanctions are so severe that many of their companies decided to pull out halfway through. Zach, what do you make to my nominations for the Great British Star and Red Devil this week?
Interesting. I obviously agree with the Vladimir one. That's quite an interesting one. I do agree with your British Star nominations, though. Very, very, very well. I totally agree with that, especially the people holding the coffin. I mean, wow, they it must be really hard for them to be having to do that sort of thing. They've done incredible service.
I also give Just Stop Oil another nomination as well for their protest this week. They left all these, like in Warwickshire, leaving a field all dirty.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So, fair enough. I mean, the people, though, that held the coffin for the Queen were incredible. They did their service proud, honestly. The fact they had to go up from London to win Windsor again is quite spectacular. But they did a hell of a job, absolute hell of a job. It's been a long day for them. It's been a long week for them, actually. And they should be really proud of the effort they've done as well. Right, let's get to my British Star and Red Devil nominations this week. The British Star ones, I'm going to give them to the people of Iran, the protesters of Iran. Because if you haven't paid attention to what has happened in Iran, well, let me tell you what's going on there. These protests are about a death of a woman, 20. I think it was 22-year-old actually, as well. It's 22-year-old a woman that got arrested, then got killed, as well, for basically the crime of not wearing the headscarf correctly. As well, it's incredible. Their rules. As well, of a death of a young woman in custody a year ago. It's 22-year-old. Her name was Maha Amini, as well, for her death. That was her.
Is this the Taliban's rules?
No, this is the Iran. This is Iran. So this is not
similar to the
Afghanistan.
Taliban, in my opinion.
Yeah, it sounds similar, but this is Iran, Charlie. We're talking about here, the Islamic Republic of Iran, where they've got authoritarian rules there as well. There's been many protests over her dead. There's been a lot of people, huge uprising over over her death. Actually, a lot of people thought it's unsustainable, unreasonable, totally unacceptable, as well. So yeah, there've been lots of protests on that. A lot of brave women have come out of the streets and protested, and actually have taken their headscarf off as well, Charlie, against their religious right. Fair play to them. They absolutely deserve to do that after what the police did, and killing this woman off. It's fair play to these protesters. They are brave people. The police have had to crack down. The government, the president is now taking this head on. And it's going to be a big confrontation over the next few days, I think, Charlie. Watch out for this one. But fair play to the Iranian people. They're my British Star this week as well. There's several Red Devils I have to think of this week. Obviously, Putin is one of them. That's have to be definitely that one. I'm also going to give it to Kwasi Kwarteng for his absolutely insane budget. I mean, most insane mini, not so mini budget. That Bennett, that's as I said, completely tone deaf and idiotic. I mean, it's probably the worst budget that I've seen in my lifetime. The fact that it goes to all the wrong areas and not to those who really do need it. The fact is, the market's crashed, the pound crashed, the borrowings got more expensive, and yet we're going to borrow so much money whilst also getting so much tax cuts as well. It's incredible, really, to be fair. This is going to be the most unaffordable budget you'll ever see, Charlie, in a long time as well. In terms of that, so that's my Red Devil of the week. Obviously, Vladimir Putin as well. Can I actually add to my British Star as well, Charlie? I've just actually remembered this as well. I'm going to give actually two more as well. I'm going to give the second British Star to Christian Amanpour, who's a journalist at CNN, for she was due to hold an interview with the Iranian president actually in America, and yet somehow the Iranians wouldn't hold the interview unless Cristiano Paul wore the scarf that was
God.
normally Iranians wear in Iran. This interview was going to be held in the US, Charlie, at the UN. So this is an interview on US soil, and yet the president was dictating that the interviewer wear a scarf, even though she's not in Iran.
Wow.
So they didn't go ahead with the interview. She stood her ground and didn't go ahead with the interview. So fair play to Cristiano and Paul, well done. And the honorary mention for me for the British Star as well, Charlie, goes to Roger Federer, who's retiring after 21 Grand Slams victories as well. Incredible career. He signed off his career last night against Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal and Andy Murray as well in a team of 4. An incredible finale to what Roger Federer's outstanding career. He also gets the British Star for me as well this week, Charlie.
No, without a doubt, Roger Federer deserves it for the tennis career. He's been one of the most successful tennis players ever. And I have to say, do I agree with Kwasi Kwarteng? Interestingly, not sure on that one, depending on whether you are a conservative or not. I did think the budget was better than what we had before, but here's the thing. I think Vladimir Putin deserves the nomination this week because of Russia's war in Ukraine. The fact that he's going to mobilize the country, for me, is bad. And this Hitler despot dictator remains a threat to the world, quite frankly, with his nuclear arsenal. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. The Charlie Tolhurst Show. Be back again next week for more news and discussions and chat. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and good night.